When I was a kid, like I always said, I always wanted to be an author. I just wanted to see my name, just with author written beside it. I didn't know what I was going to write, but as I grew older, I truly believed that I was going to write a romance novel, a love story. That's what I thought, because that was what I was used to. I was reading a lot of romance books. Even in my movies, the characters that I would play should always be romantic, and also I thought that that was the kind of book that I would write. But then when I started experiencing certain things in life, I experienced widowhood. you know I also had a lot of people around me who had gone through domestic violence, sexual assaults, different things that people go through, and how it was handled because we were African women living in Africa. I was really shocked. So a few years down the line, I started working with an organization called Project Alert in Nigeria, and they are like a shelter for abused women. And I got to meet with a lot of these women. I got to speak with them. And then I started traveling all over Africa because I just got so interested in African women and their challenges and how nobody listens to them, and they feel like they're second class citizens. And as I was traveling, I met a lot of people who confided in me and told me their stories, and their stories shocked me. I could not shake it off. I was looking for a way to help them speak, because a lot of them couldn't even speak proper English, so I had to use translators. And the thing that struck me was the fact that they kept saying, please, oh, tell them they should look at us. We're suffering. Tell them, look, our children, this, that, please. And I said, okay, should I make a film? Should I do this? What can I do that will be a legacy, that will be a voice for them, that can represent them and all that? So when I was ready to write a book, I was just sitting in my house in Atlanta a few years ago. And I think I wrote this book from end of 2016. I sat down and I said, I'm ready to write a book, but my heart was tugging at me. And I'm like, I think it's time to tell their story. But it was impossible for me to write the story of all these women individually, because it would be too much for people to take in as a non-fiction book, because a lot of people don't really like non-fiction books. So I said, okay, what if I can do it to be fiction, like it's just a story, and tell their stories through the life of one person. So it's easier to follow a journey than to see what happened to different women at the same time. So I created this fictitious character who lived in a fictitious place, just like you have in Black Panther where they say Wakanda, but you cannot identify where Wakanda is. So this was me coming up with different names for different people, and the city and the village and things like that. And it was me putting names together and picking letters from each name and putting those letters together. That's how I came up with Kamin Wanaga.
I tried to pronounce it. I couldn't. Kamiwananga.
Kamin Wanaga, yeah. So
Okay.
there's Tenondiba, there's Bantakiba, there are so many people, and these are not names that exist. These are not places that exist. I created them just so as to give you an idea that it is not happening in one place in particular. It is happening all over Africa to different women. And so I created the character, gave her the journey, and her journey was a part of my story, these other women's stories, and I put everything together and just wrote it. And it took me years. It took me almost 6 to 7 years to actually publish the book, because I was scared. I was worried about how it would be received. I was worried about, people thinking, what kind of story is this? It's too painful, it's too hard, it's too this. But as these years were passing, I looked at my book and I looked at what was still happening in the world, and I felt guilty that there are some things that could create awareness. There are some things that could start conversations that I have in this book, and I'm just keeping it in my house sitting there, but women need help. So I said, whatever it is, even if it's only my family members who buy it, I don't care. Let me just do it. So I published it. I did my launch last year here in Atlanta, and then I did it again in Lagos later in the year last year, and the response was crazy. People were sending me videos of themselves crying as they were reading it, sending reviews, and I'm like, okay, I didn't know that this will happen. I just wanted it to just be something that I did as contribution to raising awareness for women's plights and young girls, and I'm very grateful for the response that it's gotten so far.